Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to focus on intervals of decrease. So we're going to begin with a repeat and review on our strategy, and then we're going to do examples. So again, the strategy, it's very important for me to reiterate that when we read graphs, we do it from left to right. So again, we begin at the left, and then we scan the graph to the right, regardless of how the arrows are pointing. And today we're gonna look for the places in which the graph is moving downward. So we want to look for those downward movements. So things that look like this are the object of interest today. And again, we're gonna express this by using interval notation. So parentheses, open circles, and infinity. And then for brackets, we use the closed. When we have closed circles, that's when we need to use the brackets. So let's begin with the examples, and let's start with this one. Let's begin by scanning the graph from left to right. So here, as I begin scanning, you can see that my graph is increasing. And today we want to see where the graph is decreasing. So past this point, you can see that now we have that downward movement. So this is going to be our interval of decrease. So let's go ahead and highlight this in red. Our job is to now represent this interval of decrease using interval notation. So I'm going to do so by first writing the endpoints explicitly. So here you can see that the interval begins at +1, and then here it ends at +5. So the interval of decrease is going to be from +1 to +5 due to those restrictions here, and we use brackets because we have closed circles. So let's check out another problem, again emphasizing the intervals of decrease. So let's begin on the left and let's begin scanning it to the right. So you can see that here the graph is increasing, and then once we get to this point, as soon as we keep on scanning to the right, we see that now the graph is decreasing. So let's go ahead and highlight this interval of decrease. Now let's continue. So as we go to the right, we can see that the graph is increasing again, and once we reach this peak, as soon as we start scanning it to the right, you can see that the graph is decreasing once more. So let's go ahead and draw or highlight this as well. Next, I'm going to draw the splits here explicitly. So I see that my first interval of decrease begins at -2, and then it ends at -1. And then for my second interval of decrease, we can see that it begins here at +2, and then it ends here at +4. So let's go ahead and express this using interval notation. So the interval of decrease in this scenario is going to be from -2 to -1 in bracket because of closed circles on both endpoints, union +2 to +4, again with brackets due to the closed circles. And that would be the intervals of decrease. So let's move on to the next example, which here now we have infinity, and we have curves instead of straight lines. So again, no different from the previous problems. We begin on the left, and here we begin scanning to the right, and we can see that this part is increasing because again we move from left to right. And now here, once we reach the peak, we can see that now our graph is decreasing. So let's highlight this in red to identify this areas where the graph is decreasing. Now let's continue to scan the graph to the right. So we can see that this graph goes under another increase. But then as soon as we reach this point, once we extend to the right, we can see another decrease. So let's go ahead and highlight this area as well. Now, since we have an arrow on the right hand side here, we can see that the x-axis is going to approach positive infinity. So we are ready to write this in interval notation. So interval of decrease is going to be a union because we have two areas that decrease beginning here at -2 and ending at 0. At 0 because here that's the origin right there. The second break begins here at +3 and then it's gonna extend towards positive infinity. So here we're gonna write from -2 to 0 in brackets union 3 comma infinity, and infinity is always closed with the parentheses. Alright, let's check out one final example, which is a piecewise example. So we begin by first starting at the left and then scanning the graph to the right. So as I begin scanning to the right, we can see that we're going upwards, so we're increasing. Then we have a hole and we jump, and then once we extend to the right, we can see that now we're on a constant interval. So once we reach this hole, we go down, and then finally we see a decrease occurring, which is what we are interested in this particular problem. So because we have an arrow here, the x-axis is going to approach positive infinity, and then the decrease begins here at this endpoint, +3. So interval of decrease is going to be from 3 towards infinity, and infinity we always close it with a parentheses.